The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the blizzard as I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. 9 hours of driving through hell to surprise her. My Abigail. The girl I'd lifted from waitressing shifts and community college debt into a life of luxury she'd never imagined possible. The cake box slid across the passenger seat as I rounded the final corner. Exhausted but smiling, I trudged through the snow, my Italian leather shoes ruined, designer coat soaked. Then I heard her voice floating from her sister's kitchen, "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance billions." Their laughter cut deeper than the February cold. I placed the cake on the counter and walked out. She didn't see me for 90 days after that. By then, my silence had taught her what my billions never could. I remember the first time I saw Abigail. Not at some charity gala or corporate mixer where gold diggers typically circled, but at a roadside diner where she served burnt coffee with genuine smiles. I was already worth 9 figures then, but drove my old Audi that day, the one from before the IPO, because sometimes I needed to remember who I was beneath the Forbes headlines. "You want the pie?" "Made it myself this morning," she'd said, wiping her hands on a stained apron. No makeup, hair pulled back, exhaustion shadowing her eyes. 3 jobs and night classes, I'd learn later. "I can't eat pie for breakfast," I'd replied. "Sure you can. You're a grown man." Then she'd laughed, God, that laugh. Like something breaking free. 7 years later, that laugh had changed. Sharper edges. Something calculated underneath. I noticed the shift 6 months ago. Abigail started spending more time with her sister Mia and Mia's new friends, women with designer wardrobes they updated weekly and men whose watches cost more than their cars. Suddenly our modernist mansion felt quaint to her. My charitable foundation work uninspired. The private jet last year's model. "When are you going to make a real move, Noah?" she asked one night, scrolling through Instagram while I reviewed housing development plans for disaster survivors. "Everyone's wondering why you're playing it so safe with your investments." I'd smiled, kissed her forehead. "Not everyone measures success by quarterly returns, sweetheart. February in Chicago means winter at its cruelest." When Abigail mentioned wanting to visit Mia for her birthday weekend, I played along, feigning disappointment about work obligations keeping me behind. In truth, I'd arranged everything meticulously, cleared my calendar, special ordered her favorite hazelnut torte from Maison Laurent, made reservations at Alinea. Even packed her favorite dress in my overnight bag. The storm warnings started Thursday night. 10 inches expected across 3 states, including my entire route. My security team advised against the drive. So did my assistant. So did basic common sense. "Sir, we can send the company helicopter once the weather clears," Theodore suggested. "And ruin the surprise?" "No. I'll be fine." The drive became a white-knuckled nightmare. 3 times I nearly turned around. 3 times I pictured her face, how her eyes would light up, how she'd throw her arms around me, and kept going. After 9 grueling hours, I parked a block from Mia's lakefront property, grabbed the cake box, and trudged through snow that soaked through my custom-made shoes. The front door was unlocked. Voices and laughter drifted from the kitchen. I slipped inside, shaking off snow, about to call out when I heard my name. Nothing from Noah. Complete radio silence. Abigail's voice, slightly slurred. "Day drinking with her sister, not unusual lately. He's probably holed up in his office pretending to work while playing that stupid game," Mia replied, the contempt unmistakable. I froze, cake box growing heavy in my hands. At least he's not here ruining your birthday weekend, Mia continued. You deserve some fun without the walking calculator following you around. I almost stepped in then, to break the tension with a joke. Instead, I heard what came next. God, can you imagine? Abigail laughed that new, sharp laugh. He'd follow us to dinner tonight, talking about his precious foundation and how many homeless people he's housing while we try to have a good time. Then he'd get that wounded puppy look when I want to go dancing after. My stomach clenched. I stood perfectly still, suddenly aware of melting snow dripping from my coat onto Mia's imported hardwood floors. Well, the roads are a disaster anyway, Mia said. My friend's husband got stuck on the highway for 3 hours. Then Abigail said words that would replay in my mind for months. God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance billions. Mia's response came instantly, or at least a few months in a coma. Imagine the shopping spree with his black card while he's hooked to machines. Their laughter, both of them, echoed through the entryway. Laughter at the thought of me dead or incapacitated. From the woman I'd given everything to. The woman who once couldn't afford her electric bill, now casually wishing death on me for financial gain. Something cold settled in my chest, colder than the blizzard outside. I didn't make a conscious decision, my body simply moved. 3 steps into the kitchen. The women's backs to me, wine glasses in hand. The cake box placed precisely in the center of the Marble Island counter. 3 steps back. They must have sensed movement because they turned simultaneously. The transformation on Abigail's face happened in stages: confusion, recognition, horror, panic. Blood drained visibly from her features. The wine glass tilted in her hand, spilling red onto her white cashmere sleeve. Noah. Her voice barely a whisper. I said nothing. What words could possibly address what I'd heard? I simply turned and walked back through the entryway, out the front door, into the relentless snow. Noah. Her voice followed me, shrill now. I kept walking. Back in my Range Rover, I sat motionless, watching snowflakes accumulate on the windshield. My phone began vibrating incessantly in my pocket. I finally checked the screen: 17 missed calls in 20 minutes. 38 text messages, their preview snippets increasingly frantic. Noah, please, it wasn't what it sounded like. Please answer, where are you? I turned the phone off completely and started the engine. The exclusive Waldorf Hotel was 30 minutes away. In this weather, perhaps an hour. I drove mechanically, seeing nothing but Abigail's laughing face, hearing nothing but those terrible words. The presidential suite cost $4,200 per night. I barely registered signing the check. The room was immaculate: king bed, panoramic city views, champagne chilling in anticipation of a wealthy guest celebration. I sat fully clothed on the edge of the bed until sunrise, staring at the textured wallpaper, seeing nothing. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 63 texts and 29 missed calls. I read none of them, sending just one message to Theodore, my head of security: implementation of protocol silence required. Secure residence immediately. His response came within seconds: protocol silence confirmed. Residence secured. Safe house prepared. Awaiting your arrival, sir. Protocol silence was something we'd established after a kidnapping attempt 3 years prior: complete communications blackout, restricted property access, prearranged secure location, financial lockdown. Never imagined I'd use it because of my wife. The 9-hour drive home took almost 12 through the worsening storm. I entered our gated estate through the service entrance, using biometric access Theodore had ensured would remain active only for me. Our home, 15,000 square feet of designer perfection that Architectural Digest had once featured, felt like a museum dedicated to a life that no longer existed. I moved methodically through rooms Abigail had spent millions decorating, gathering only essentials, clothes I'd owned before her shopping sprees, my grandmother's vintage Patek Philippe watch, the notebooks containing my original business plans, written when I still rented a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. In our bedroom, I stood before the wedding portrait, Abigail looking up at me with what I'd always interpreted as adoration. Now I wondered, had it always been calculation? Had her eyes always been measuring what I was worth to her? I didn't take our photos. Let them remain on every wall, silent witnesses to what we'd become. But I did retrieve our marriage certificate and prenuptial agreement from the fireproof safe. The document she'd initially balked at signing, until I'd softened its terms considerably, ensuring she'd receive $5 million, enough that you'll never struggle again, I told her, thinking it romantic. Before leaving, I made 3 small changes to the house. I reprogrammed the smart thermostat to 62 degrees. She always complained if it dropped below 70. I removed the custom lighting system from her closet that made her designer clothes look their best under perfect illumination. And I changed all the digital access codes, leaving only the front door accessible to her key. As I drove toward Theodore's secure lake house, our neighbor Lydia was collecting her mail. She glanced at my packed car with raised eyebrows. "Spring cleaning," I said with a forced smile. "In February? During a blizzard?" She didn't believe me, but Midwestern politeness prevented further inquiry. At Theodore's fortified property, purchased ostensibly as my weekend fishing retreat, I unloaded the physical remnants of my life while Theodore watched silently. When we finished, he handed me a glass of 30-year-old Macallan. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" he asked, military habits never quite abandoned. I nodded. "Whatever happened, remember that no wealth can shield us from human nature. Not yours, not hers." I took a long sip of scotch, feeling it burn down to where that cold knot had settled in my chest. "I'm not sure which is worse, Theodore, that she wishes me dead, or that I never truly knew her at all." Dawn broke on day 3 of what I'd come to think of as my exile. Theodore had given me the master suite of his lake house, a fortress disguised as a luxury cabin, with bulletproof windows and a panic room concealed behind wood paneling. I'd slept perhaps 4 hours total since hearing those words in Mia's kitchen. My phone remained off. According to Theodore, Abigail had escalated to calling my executive assistant, my board members, even my mother, in her desperation to reach me. Theodore fielded these inquiries with military precision. "Mr. Westbrook is unavailable and unreachable at present." "No, I cannot forward messages." "No, I cannot disclose his location." I sat at Theodore's dining table that morning, watching ice fishermen on the frozen lake while he placed a secure call to Milton Pierce, my financial advisor since before the IPO that made me a billionaire. Milton arrived 2 hours later, carrying 3 leather portfolios and the grave expression of a doctor delivering terminal news. "You've invoked protocol silence," he said, unpacking financial documents. "May I ask if we're dealing with external threats or internal betrayal?" "The latter," I replied. He nodded once, requiring no elaboration. "Then we should review the full financial picture immediately." For the next 4 hours, we dissected 7 years of marital finances. The results were illuminating. Beyond Abigail's authorized spending already substantial at $50,000 monthly, she'd been withdrawing additional cash, $17,800 monthly for nearly a year. Over $200,000 unaccounted for. "There's more," Milton said, sliding a spreadsheet toward me. 3 store credit cards opened in the past 6 months. Combined balances exceeding $145,000. An unusual activity on the black card last quarter, a $30,000 payment to a divorce attorney in Miami. A consultation, perhaps. Exploring options while maintaining access to my wealth. The calculated nature of it struck deeper than the betrayal itself. "Implement financial separation protocol," I said quietly. "Freeze joint accounts beyond basic household maintenance. Suspend all additional lines of credit. Transfer agreed upon separation funds to her personal account." Milton didn't question the decision. The prenuptial specified $5 million in case of separation. Shall I authorize the full amount immediately? I considered this. The prenup had been my idea, not to protect myself, but to ensure Abigail would never return to poverty if things ended. $5 million wouldn't sustain her current lifestyle indefinitely, but it would prevent genuine hardship. No, I decided. Transfer $1 million. Hold the remainder pending legal consultation. And Milton moved my charitable foundation control temporarily to the board. Remove her signatory authority. He nodded, making notes. Your instructions regarding Westbrook Industries. Activate contingency plan Falcon. Transfer voting shares to the secure trust. Board announcement prepared citing personal leave of absence, duration unspecified. These were mechanisms we'd established years ago, corporate safeguards against various worst-case scenarios. Never imagined implementing them because my wife laughed at the prospect of my death. After Milton departed, I finally powered on my laptop, avoiding email but accessing our home security system remotely. The cameras showed Abigail had returned from her sister's, pacing frantically through rooms, phone perpetually at her ear. In her bedroom now, she sat on the floor surrounded by tissue boxes. Genuine distress or performance for cameras she knew existed? I closed the laptop. Watching felt invasive, even though it was technically my house, my security system. "Theodore," I called. He appeared immediately. "I need secure communications with Saul Goldberg." "The divorce attorney?" Theodore clarified. "Yes. And arrange a meeting with Rahone tomorrow regarding company operations during my absence." That night, I drafted 3 documents: formal financial separation notice, temporary removal from foundation operations, and contingent divorce filing not to be submitted yet, just prepared. Clinical language addressing the systematic dismantling of a 7-year marriage. In bed, staring at Theodore's cabin ceiling, I realized I hadn't cried. Not once. The hollow space in my chest wasn't filled with grief but something colder, more methodical. Part of me stood apart, analyzing my own response with detached curiosity. Was this shock? Self-preservation? Or had I always suspected, somewhere beneath conscious thought, that Abigail's affection had come with ownership papers? I powered on my phone briefly, ignoring the 84 notifications from Abigail, and posted a single image to my rarely used Instagram, the half-eaten birthday cake on Mia's counter. No caption. No context. Just visual evidence of my presence in that kitchen. Within minutes, mutual friends began texting. Abigail called 6 times in rapid succession. I turned the phone off again, set it aside, and allowed myself a thin smile in the darkness. Silence could speak volumes when used strategically. Protocol silence wasn't just about disappearing. It was about controlling the narrative through absence. About letting the consequences of her words unfold without my intervention. About creating space for truth to breathe without the distortion of explanation or excuse. Sleep finally came near dawn, bringing dreams of Abigail as I'd first met her, laughing across a diner counter, genuine and unpolished. I woke with tears on my pillow, the first outward sign that beneath my strategic response lay a wounded heart. Day 7 of silence found me pushing a cart through Whole Foods, Theodore shadowing at a discreet distance. After a week of existing on coffee and whatever Theodore placed before me, I'd decided it was time to reclaim some normalcy. Grocery shopping, that most mundane of activities, seemed a reasonable step toward rebuilding routine. I was examining organic produce when I heard her voice, Noah. Not Abigail, Mia. Standing between artisanal cheeses and imported olives, designer handbag clutched like a shield, eyes wide with disbelief at finding me here. Oh my God, Noah. Where have you been? Abigail's falling apart. She hasn't slept, cheese. I continued selecting tomatoes, saying nothing. Are you seriously ignoring me right now? Indignation replaced concern in her voice. This is childish, Noah. Ghosting your wife over a stupid joke. I placed the tomatoes in my cart and finally met her eyes. A joke, I repeated flatly. Yes, a joke. People say stupid things when they're drunk. It didn't mean anything. Around us, Saturday shoppers pretended not to eavesdrop while straining to catch every word. Tell me, Mia, I said quietly, do you often joke about your partner dying for financial gain? Is that normal sister talk? Would you want James to overhear you wishing him dead? Her face flushed. That's not your twisting. Or laughing about months of silence while I'm in a coma. Was that the punchline or just the setup? You're blowing this completely out of proportion. Her voice rose, drawing more attention. Am I? Then answer this, if I hadn't walked into that kitchen, would Abigail have ever told me what she said? Would you? Mia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words emerged. That's what I thought. I abandoned my half-filled cart and walked away, leaving her surrounded by wealthy weekend shoppers pretending they hadn't witnessed the exchange. Outside, Theodore materialized beside me. That could have gone better, he observed. It went exactly as expected, I replied, sliding into the passenger seat of his SUV. She'll call Abigail immediately. And that helps how? It confirms I'm alive and local. It introduces consequences. And it establishes that I know exactly what was said. The following day brought a strategic shift from Abigail. After a week of frantic calls and messages, she switched to a single daily text brief, seemingly heartfelt, I miss you. Please come home. I need to explain. I read them without responding, each message a data point in my evolving understanding of who she truly was. The Abigail I thought I'd married would have shown up at Theodore's door, would have fought through security, would have demanded confrontation. This measured approach suggested calculation rather than desperation. On day 10, I activated the next phase. The formal financial separation notice was delivered to her at the foundation offices, my foundation, which funded her comfortable executive director position requiring minimal actual work. The courier reported she'd gone white upon reading the documents, excused herself from a meeting, and hadn't returned. That evening, Home security footage showed her discovering her black card had been declined at dinner. The boutique shopping spree that followed $42,000 charged to our joint card in apparent retaliation resulted in automated fraud alerts and card deactivation. My phone vibrated with her incoming call. For the first time in 10 days, I answered. Silence on the line. Then a shaky inhale. Noah. Her voice small, uncertain. Yes. Another pause. You're freezing our accounts. I'm separating our finances, I corrected. The prenuptial agreement specified terms. 1 million has been transferred to your personal account. 1 mil. She stopped herself. Noah, we need to talk. Not like this. Face to face. I disagree. Please, she whispered. What you heard, it wasn't what you think. What did I hear, Abigail? I kept my voice neutral. Tell me exactly what I heard. She hesitated. I said something stupid. Something I didn't mean. I'd been drinking with Mia. Quoted, I interrupted. Word for word. Another pause. I don't remember exactly. You do. Noah. God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance billions. I quoted her words flatly. Then laughter. From both of you. Her breathing quickened. I was drunk, it was just dark humor. Would you have told me about this conversation if I hadn't overheard it? Silence stretched between us. That's what I thought, I said quietly, and ended the call. Later that night, I posted to social media for the second time, a simple status saying, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Within minutes, mutual friends began commenting, asking oblique questions. Abigail's sister posted a thinly veiled accusation about overreaction and misunderstanding. Her foundation colleagues expressed concern about my absence. I watched the digital ripples spread, saying nothing. The speculation, the taking of sides, all of it predictable, none of it touching the cold certainty that had settled in my chest. The marriage I thought I had existed only in my imagination. The woman I believed I'd married was a carefully constructed fiction. What remained was determining whether anything real could be salvaged from the wreckage or if it was time to accept that some betrayals cannot be undone. 2 weeks into protocol silence, I met with Saul Goldberg in his downtown office. The view from his 40th floor windows encompassed the skyline where several buildings bore my company name. Your wife's attorney contacted me this morning, Saul said, arranging documents with methodical precision. They're pushing for reconciliation talks. She hired counsel. This surprised me. The Abigail I knew avoided confrontation, preferring charm to solve problems. Sarah Michaels specializes in high net worth reconciliations rather than divorces. Interesting choice. I absorbed this information. And your recommendation? Proceed with formal separation. 6 months legally separated before any decisions about reconciliation or divorce. Protects your assets while allowing sufficient cooling off period. I nodded, signing where he indicated. Have these served tomorrow? That afternoon, Theodore informed me that Abigail was outside his property, sitting in her car at the gate. Security confirmed she's alone. No recording devices detected. I walked to the front window. Through the trees, I could see her white Tesla, Abigail a small figure behind the wheel. Has she attempted entry? No, sir. Just sitting there. 3 hours now. I considered my options. Confrontation seemed inevitable eventually. Perhaps controlling the terms would be advantageous. Let her in, I decided. Just her. Full security protocols. 20 minutes later, she sat perched on Theodore's leather sofa. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, designer clothes rumpled, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. Nothing like the polished, camera-ready woman who'd appeared in society pages as my wife. I remained standing. "Why are you here, Abigail?" "Because you won't answer my calls." Her voice cracked. "Because you're having me served with separation papers without even talking to me." "Because the foundation board just voted to put me on leave." "Because every credit card was declined when I tried to buy groceries yesterday." "You still have access to your personal account. $1 million was transferred there per the prenuptial agreement." She flinched. "This isn't about money. Isn't it? I could use the insurance billions." "Your words, not mine." It was a stupid joke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. One thoughtless comment after too much wine. "You're destroying our marriage over that." "Our marriage was already compromised," I said quietly. "The unauthorized spending. The secret consultation with a Miami divorce attorney last quarter. The growing contempt in how you speak about me to others." Her face registered shock. "How did you?" "The difference between us, Abigail, is that I pay attention. To financial reports. To behavioral patterns. To changes in language and priorities. You've been monitoring me." Indignation replaced tears. "I've been aware. There's a difference." She stood suddenly. "I want to come home. This has gone far enough. Whatever you think you heard." "I know exactly what I heard." I pulled out my phone, pressed play on the voice memo that had been recording gift ideas during my drive. Her voice filled the room. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance billions." Mia's response, "Or at least a few months of silence while he's in a coma." Their laughter. The color drained from Abigail's face. She reached for the phone, I moved it away. "That's you recorded me?" "Without my knowledge. I was recording gift ideas on the drive. Never stopped it when I arrived. Accidental, but illuminating." She sank back onto the sofa. "Noah, please. People say things they don't mean." "I would never." "Would you have told me about this conversation if I hadn't heard it myself?" Her silence answered more eloquently than words could have. I placed a folder on the coffee table between us. The separation agreement. 6 months legally separated, after which we either reconcile or divorce. During separation, you retain residence in the house. Your foundation salary continues. The prenuptial terms apply regarding financial support. She stared at the folder without touching it. "And if I don't sign?" "Then we proceed directly to divorce under less generous terms." "This is who you really are." She looked up, eyes hard despite the tears. "Cold. Calculating. Treating our marriage like a business transaction." "No," I said quietly. "This is who I've become in the 14 days since I heard my wife laugh at the thought of my death." "Who are you, Abigail? The struggling waitress with dreams of finishing college? The society wife with expensive tastes? Or the woman who jokes about collecting insurance money over my dead body?" She had no answer. After she left, Theodore found me on the deck overlooking the frozen lake. "She looked destroyed," he observed. "No," I corrected. She looked faced with consequences. That night, I dreamed of Abigail as I'd first known her: genuine laugh, unmanicured hands, eyes that lit up discussing her community college classes. I woke wondering which version was real: the woman I fell in love with, or the one who emerged when surrounded by wealth and status. 2 days later, Milton reported unusual activity. Abigail had enrolled in business courses at Northwestern. She'd downsized from the Tesla to a modest Audi. She'd volunteered to actually work at the homeless shelter our foundation supported rather than just appearing for photo opportunities. She's adapting, Milton observed. Learning to live within different parameters. I nodded, unexpectedly moved by these changes. Were they genuine transformation or calculated performance for an audience she knew was watching? 3 weeks into separation, a thick envelope arrived via courier. Inside, a handwritten letter, 10 pages, front and back, and a USB drive. The letter chronicled our relationship from Abigail's perspective, including painful admissions about her initial motivations. When we reconnected, I was drowning, she wrote. Student debt, 3 jobs, an apartment I could barely afford. You represented security I'd never known. Did I love you? Yes. But I can't pretend financial stability wasn't part of your appeal. She described the gradual shift in her perspective: how access to wealth had changed her priorities, distorted her values, disconnected her from the person she'd been. I became someone I don't recognize, she wrote. Someone who measured worth by price tags. Someone who compared what I had to what others displayed on Instagram rather than what actually mattered. The USB contained audio recordings of her therapy sessions, shared with her therapist's permission. I listened to enough to recognize genuine self-examination rather than scripted performance. Something shifted inside me: not forgiveness, exactly, but acknowledgement that perhaps Abigail was as surprised by who she'd become as I was. 90 days after leaving that cake on Mia's counter, I texted Abigail, the Shoreline Cafe. 2 p.m. today. It was where we'd reconnected 7 years ago, the diner where she'd once worked, now upgraded but still recognizable. A neutral location laden with shared history. I arrived early, securing a corner booth with a view of Lake Michigan. She entered precisely at 2, scanning the restaurant before spotting me. The transformation was striking: her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, hair cut to shoulder length, minimal makeup. She looked more like the Abigail I'd first fallen for than the society wife she'd become. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I. Our coffee arrived. She wrapped her hands around the mug like she needed its warmth. The separation papers, she began. I signed them last week. I nodded. I know. I've been. She paused, choosing words carefully. I've been using these 3 months to figure out who I am without the safety net. Without the lifestyle I got so attached to. And what have you discovered? That I like the person I was before better than who I became. She met my eyes directly. That I allowed money to corrupt something that should have remained pure. That I'm ashamed of what I said that day, and how I've treated you for months before that. I sipped my coffee, giving her space to continue. I've gone back to school, she said. Business administration. Using my own money, what I've earned from actually working at the foundation, not just showing up for galas. I've heard. Milton keeps me informed. Of course he does. A small smile flickered across her face. I sold most of my designer things. Turns out I don't need $400 blouses to feel good about myself. Actually, they started to feel like evidence of who I don't want to be anymore. Behind her carefully chosen words, I detected something I hadn't expected, genuine growth rather than tactical repositioning. Why that comment, Abigail? Why that specific joke about the insurance? She flinched but didn't look away. Because I was becoming someone terrible. Because Mia brings out my worst self. Because in that moment, I was playing a role, the jaded wealthy wife complaining about her successful husband. It was never about actually wanting you harmed. Her voice dropped. But that doesn't excuse it. Nothing excuses it. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. But I needed you to know I understand now what I nearly destroyed. What I maybe did destroy beyond repair. I studied her face, this woman I'd loved, still loved in some broken way that might never be whole again. The separation agreement specifies 6 months, I said finally. At month 4, we re-evaluate. Decide whether to pursue reconciliation or proceed with divorce. And where are you leaning? Her voice remained steady despite the weight of the question. I don't know, I answered honestly. Some betrayals can't be undone, Abigail. Some words can't be unsaid. She nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. I understand. For what it's worth, and I know it's not worth much right now, I'm sorry. Not just for what you heard, but for who I became that could say such a thing. We talked for another hour about practical matters regarding the house, about her studies, about mutual friends who'd taken sides without understanding the situation. The conversation felt different from any we'd had in years, direct, unguarded, without the protective layers of wealth and status that had gradually insulated us from truth. As we prepared to leave, she hesitated. Can I ask one thing? You can ask. That day, with the cake. You drove through a blizzard, ruined your shoes, risked your safety, all to surprise me for my birthday. Yes. Even though I'd been awful to you for months. Even though. She absorbed this, nodding slowly. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. And who I was. I paid the check, old habits, and we walked outside. Lake Michigan stretched before us, vast and unchanging despite the human dramas played out along its shores. Month 4, I confirmed. We'll talk again. I'll be ready, she said. Whatever you decide. She hesitated, then added, I'm not trying to win you back, Noah. I'm trying to become someone worthy of having been loved by you, even if that's all in past tense now. I watched her walk to her sensible Audi, this new version of Abigail who resembled the woman I'd first loved more than the one I'd left behind. Something unlocked slightly in my chest, not forgiveness yet, but perhaps its prerequisite, recognition that people can change, that growth is possible, that sometimes what breaks can be rebuilt into something different but not lesser. That night, I purchased another cake from the same bakery identical to the one I'd left on Mia's counter 90 days earlier. I placed it on the kitchen island of my temporary apartment and took a photograph, sending it to Abigail with no caption. Her response came an hour later, I understand. Some cycles need to complete themselves. Whatever you decide at month 4, know that you changed me for the better, twice, first by loving me, then by leaving. I cut a slice of cake and sat alone, tasting sweetness that held memories of both beginning and ending. The future remained unwritten, but for the first time in 90 days, I allowed myself to imagine multiple possible versions, not all of them ending in goodbye. The hardest truth I've learned through this ordeal is that wealth doesn't just reveal character, it creates it. Money became the invisible architecture of our relationship, shaping Abigail into someone neither of us recognized, while I remained blind to the transformation happening before my eyes. When you lift someone from struggle to luxury, you're not just changing their circumstances, you're altering the gravity they live within. Some rise to this new reality with grace. Others become untethered, floating away from their authentic selves until they can no longer recognize the ground they once stood upon. My mistake wasn't loving Abigail or sharing my fortune. It was assuming that the woman who served coffee with genuine smiles would remain unchanged by access to billions. That her values were fixed rather than fluid. That money would enhance rather than distort what made her lovable. What saves us, if we can be saved, isn't the removal of wealth but the recognition of its influence. Abigail's journey back to herself began not when I cut off her credit cards, but when she confronted how prosperity had polluted her perspective. My own healing started when I stopped seeing myself primarily as a provider and remembered I was a person deserving of genuine love, not calculated interest. Whether our marriage survives or ends, we've both been transformed by this crucible. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. Some growth requires breaking before rebuilding. And sometimes, silence speaks more truthfully than all our carefully crafted words. If something in this story resonated with you, perhaps you've experienced betrayal by someone you trusted completely, or you've watched money change someone you love, know that you're not alone in that hollow feeling that follows such discovery. The hardest question I faced wasn't whether to leave or stay. It was whether I could trust my own judgment again after being so catastrophically wrong about someone I shared my life with. Many of you are wrestling with that same question right now. I want to hear your stories. Not for voyeuristic entertainment, but because sharing these wounds sometimes helps them heal, helps us recognize patterns we might otherwise repeat. Comment below with your experience, or if that's too public, message me directly. I read everything, even if I can't respond to all. If you found value in this journey through betrayal and potential redemption, share it with someone who might need these words today. Someone questioning whether to walk away or try again. Someone wondering if what broke can ever be whole. Subscribe for the month 4 update. I don't know yet whether that story ends with reconciliation or divorce papers. I'm still living it day by day, just like you're living your own complicated truth. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is walking away. And sometimes, the bravest thing is giving someone the chance to become better than their worst moment.